Hello and welcome to my video. Today I'm going to be showing you the inside of my bullet journal. The concept of doing diaries and keeping notebook calendars is nothing new to me. I've had many diaries over the last 25 years. Here are just a few. But this is the first year I set out to try and do a bullet journal. So here is my bullet journal and let's begin. First of all, let's talk about the book itself. So this is A5 and it's from a company called That. I can't pronounce it. And I bought it at the end of December 2016 for about £14. So of course, my name is Rebecca Jane Brown. But most of you will know me as Becky online. For me, this journal has primarily been a mix of notes about my days and a calendar. So this is not a full-fledged diary. However, there is lots of personal information in here. So what I've done is I've put post-it notes over that sort of content. Things like people's names, addresses, locations, my jobs. As a freelancer, my work changes all the time, so I've set aside a different book just for work. It also makes it easier to keep tabs on what I'm doing at the end of each month. Taxes, accountants, all that sort of stuff. Here is my index. This page grew as the year went on, and if anything, I find it more helpful now, at the end of the year, looking back, than when I was going through the year. And as I added more pages at the front of the book, I ran out of lines, so it got a bit messy. I feel it's messy. When I started my bullet journal, this was the first thing I set up, and I stuck to it for as long as I could, but later in the year I decided to redo my key, simplify it to this. I just found that it was a bit too complicated for me personally. So this was my calendar. I did draw this myself, however I was inspired by this person here. She makes great videos about bullet journals and really inspired me at the start of this. So as the year's gone on, I have been ticking off the days, and as you can see, I have missed a fair few. So now I'm up to date. Apologies. For the majority of this year, I was a member at the local leisure centre and had a gym membership, and the timetables changed about 3 times, so I had to keep sticking them in with Pritt Stick. But now I've cancelled my gym membership, so I don't look at that anymore. I left it there purely so you could see it. Up until August, I was looking at that all the time. By the way, if you haven't noticed, I'm an incredibly visual person, and as a vlogger, I'm constantly using my hands. However, you don't tend to see my hands when I vlog. They're down here in front of me, and I am struggling to control my hands as I'm vlogging. I naturally do this, I'm not even putting it on. I will try and restrain them as much as possible in this. It's why I want to learn BSL or ASL, because I need something to do with my hands. Okay, future log. Now this actually became more helpful as the year went on. I didn't use this at the beginning of the year, and then suddenly, boom. For me it suddenly became more important. I'm not sure why. Maybe it's because things got busier, more things have happened in the last 3 months, there's been more things to prepare for. Okay, now we move on to the initial pages. Oh, another note is there might be lots of hair in this book. Reading and writing books while simultaneously having trichotillomania, things like this are going to happen. Sometimes I lose so much hair that my hair can act as bookmarks. Anyway, so we have New Year's resolutions. These are the ones that I set in this video here at the end of 2016. I've added a few extra ones in addition to the ones that I set there, such as walk 10,000 steps per day. But overall, those are the things that I have tried to stick to this year. And personally, I think I've done pretty well. And I will do a video on that at the end of the year. Now this, I suppose, is exceptionally personal, but this is my period log. So this is my Bella Beat leaf, and it monitors my activity, my water consumption, the amount of steps I do, but it also monitors my menstrual cycle. And I have an electronic log about my menstrual cycles. All that personal information, look at that. You never know, my phone may be stolen, my phone might not be to hand. It is always good to have backups of things like that. But as for my period log, it's quite basic. The date I start, the date I finish. When I was a teenager, I had exceptional period problems. So for me, I do keep notes on what happens. As I'm getting older, my symptoms are changing, and personally I find it fascinating when you look back. Anyway, that is my period log. I'm not embarrassed by anything that's here. It's all a fact of life. Now this page I did at the very beginning of the year, and if I'm honest, I have found it to be a bit of a waste of time. I never look at this. Of course, everything on this list is important and valid, and it's good to incorporate this stuff into our daily lives, but at the same time, it's just not been something I've really used in this journal. Really, I should have had it on a poster in the room somewhere. Now we get onto the list section of my book. Prior this year, I have never been fond of lists. I didn't find them satisfying or helpful, but something this year changed within me, and I've become a bit obsessed. As I'm filming this, my cat has decided to come and say hello. Hi, Archie. Oh, I love cats. Right, off you go. Go on, go on, go. Archie, go. Right, good boy. This is self-explanatory, I suppose, but yeah, this list is all the books I wanted to read this year, and despite the fact I don't feel I've done very well on my list, I have read lots of books. I ended up reading lots of new books in addition to the ones I wanted to read, so I don't think I was that unsuccessful here. When I started ticking these things off my list, I didn't do a X, I just coloured the boxes in, so I thought to myself I would stick to that. And of course, over the year I've used different pens, of course. Some people might find that irritating, but I don't mind. This list is of things I wanted to see, be it films, shows, plays. I desperately want to go and see the Anastasia on Broadway. Ooh, I've missed something else off the list. Here we go again. Just ticking another one off. That's been a more successful list, I suppose. Now, this page is very private. This is a very mumbled, mixed-mashed list of all my video ideas. Now, as the year goes on, life happens, so sometimes I've put ideas in here and I have really wanted to do them, and then other things have come along, and sometimes ideas get forgotten. Looking at this, it does frustrate me because there's so many things here that I wish I'd done when I'd written them, because my ideas have changed since then or they're out of date. For example, I wanted to do a video on the Peter Capaldi version of Doctor Who and how I've sort of fallen out with the show, but now things have changed. So, I think this was around March, this period here. Why it's okay to not talk about what you're going through. That is so important. I'm definitely moving that onto my next list in my next book. I went through a phase of trying to use a typewriter. I thought I could shake up my bullet journal. It didn't last, of course, but I did a list on my typewriter. Maybe this is more interesting if you pause this and have a look, but I guess that gives you an insight into my brain. I'm constantly coming up with ideas, but these are the ones I have written down. Okay, the next two pages are wish lists. Again, they're self-explanatory, but we have lifelong wishes. I know there's not that many. And smaller wishes, more materialistic wishes. I have a home wish list separate to this, but that's on my desk. The next page I set up in August, and it's basically just a list of all the books I've read and my ratings. I don't publicly rate all the books I read, although I give very harsh reviews on my Goodreads, which is there. You are welcome to go and have a look and follow and see my harshness. Okay, next page. In the last year or so, I have developed a fascination with Jane Austen's books. For those of you who have been watching me for an exceptionally long time, you may remember I said this in 2009. I think that Jane Austen was, and still is, an amazing author, but she's probably not my type. I know, it's amazing how things change. But this page is inspired by some of the books of hers that I have read, or adaptations that I have seen. I actually started this when I was watching the Sense and Sensibility from 1994. I think at least a half of this list are phrases and words from the Colin Firth Pride and Prejudice adaptation. I love the way they speak, and so many of these phrases and words are lost in modern society, and whether or not I will be able to adapt these into my own vocabulary, who knows, but I wanted to make a record just so that I can have a look and keep looking back. Maybe you guys would like me to do an ASMR video of all these words. Let me know. Improper, sensible, propriety, acquaintance. I just think it's lovely. Now this page I'm not proud of. Again, this is a page that I started because I was inspired by other people, and it just sort of fell apart as the year went on. There is a quote on here twice, so see if you can spot that. I do love quotes, and I find them helpful and inspiring, but simultaneously I can find quotes quite annoying. In 2014, I did a video about quote claiming and how lots of us come up with quotes ourselves or think things for the first time, inspired by the lives we've led, and yet they can be on par or exact word for word with other quotes from people hundreds of years in the past. So who can claim the quotes and the ideas if we all come to the conclusion? That is a massive topic, of course. That video sort of goes into more depth about it. Go and have a look at that. And as for the initial pages, I left about, 10-15 pages at the start of the book before I started the calendar part of my diary, so that I could add extra pages in. So I still have spare pages. It is good to leave some space in your journal because you never know what you might need it for later in the year. Moving on. Right, now we finally get onto the calendar part of the journal. To give you a bit of context to my year, January started brilliantly. The first week and a half were fantastic. And then something horrific happened around the second week that sort of impacted my entire year. If I just flick forward, I actually started antipsychotics here, 5th of January. So because of that, the next 3 months were quite all over the place. By the time we get to May, June, I'm back on top of myself. We'll get to that. But when I look at my diary, I can see it. Even as a visual person, ugh. But going back to the very, very beginning of January, as I said, it started well. I think I was quite protective of my journal at first. I didn't know what to put in it, so I sort of kept it as basic as possible. This was my to-do list. If anything, I think that should have been in my future log there, but because this was the first month of the year, it just made sense to start it there. Now this is something I started and kept up for a couple of months. It was my tracked list. It took a few months to sort of understand what exactly I needed to document and what was a waste of time. I dropped monitoring my PED fairly early. I've been doing it for 10 years, it's a part of my day, I don't need to document that. I wanted to see if there was a correlation between alcohol and pain, but of course when I started the antipsychotics I couldn't drink, so that became a waste of time. For me it was a hard month to document, with the emotional upheaval and the medication. I appreciate I may be going into too much depth, apologies. In February I started it again, and for the most part I documented. There's a big gap there, I can't remember why. Pain level, medium low, medium high. If you are somebody that is in constant pain and have yet to be diagnosed, I do think it's a good idea to monitor your pain levels. It's also good to monitor your activity, how many steps you take when you drive, and see if there's a correlation. It's one reason why I love this. I have both a physical and an electronic copy of my activity, so when I go and see my doctor, I can shove it in his face and go, hey, look, this is my life. Sometimes it can take a long time to be listened to, so it's good to back up evidence, I suppose. Oh yes, this was another thing I started to do. I tried to monitor my water and hot chocolate intake. Each dot represents a cup, and yes, I know, I was not drinking enough. That's another reason why I wanted to document it. Slowly over the course of the year, I have got better, as you will hopefully see. And now I have a spring, a bottle from rebeccabiz, that monitors my intake. Hashtag not spawn. So I know for a fact I'm doing a lot better. Right, February. I tried to shake up the layout of my book. This did not last. That's terrible. I know I went away during February, so I didn't take this with me. If you can read, you can see that I am talking in the past tense. I didn't use my journal that much in February. I sort of went back and filled it back in. I know that's not what you're supposed to do. And there's some pink for some wine. It was my brother's big birthday. Do not mix alcohol with medication. Did I really only drink that much water? That can't be right. If I went there, then of course I must have had a drink. Nope, that's not accurate. Nope. Now we get to March. Now March was an extremely painful month. I won't talk about pain every month, but as you can see, the middle of March was so painful. Oh, woe is me. I'm just going to spray some lavender to make me feel better. Now this is the month where I feel I hit my stride with the layout aspect of my book. Although the design element of this changes as the book goes on, as you can see it sort of stays in this rectangular column structure. Now we get on to April. I think April's the last month I do the tracks stuff. This is when I went to Amsterdam for VidCon. I stayed in Amsterdam, came home, and then at the end of the month I went to Ireland. That was an adventure. And then we get to May. Oh, I did a tract. That must have been my last tract. I tried something different, I suppose. At this point I was doing physio, I was taking on board extra work. Now you may have seen this at the bottom. This is a water hot chocolate intake tracker. Now I didn't always fill this out. Sometimes I just forgot. You'll see it, here we go, you'll see it keep coming backwards and forwards for the rest of the book. Now June was a big month for me. So many things shifted at that point, both good and bad. In terms of how I scheduled my book, by this point I was drawing the next month outlines out halfway through the previous month. So around this period I drew out this month, and I was determined to have a good month. Unfortunately, at the end of May, my pleurisy started. So for the next month I was ill, in addition to the pain and the migraines, etc. But then June hit, and it hit badly. We did have a few good things happen, but then my cat died. And my cats are my world. I know I had 6, I now have 5, but this page is one of the darkest in my book. It is interesting to me how this book leaves out the emotional aspects of my life. It is more of a structure, a calendar, an organiser. So the emotion on that page does not come through. A terrible, terrible week. Moving on. So we made it through June and we got to July. Excuse my terrible drawing of a sunshine. I promise I'm an artist. I promise. One small struggle I have had with this book this year is my handwriting. It varies, it changes every month, and I knew that I was going to show you this at the end of the year, so there was a bit of pressure there to make my writing look nice. Sometimes I tried, sometimes I didn't. Again, don't feel pressured into making things better than they actually are. Just showcase them for what they are. I started setting myself some goals. I didn't film my bullet journal update at that point, but I'm doing it now. This is when I kicked myself and said, Becca, come on, you're not doing your key, let's do this. So I redid my key, and that's roughly what I've stuck to for the rest of the year. You can't quite see my symbols because I've used black crosses over the top. I actually found marking everything with a black cross easier to distinguish from the black text. I could see immediately what I had and hadn't done. Colour can be such an important tool with this. Okay, I'm going to move on to August. And this is when my journal sort of steps up and gets a bit more chaotic. So I ended up going away with my family spontaneously after summer in the city. So my diary got very messy. I had to move things around, things kept changing, so it's a bit chaotic. There's lots of crossings out and arrows, and I should say that it's okay to make mistakes in your journal. Lots of us feel quite protective of our pages. We get on to September. Now this is the month I fell in love with a purple pen. You may have noticed that each month I set myself a colour starting in March. So green, red, pink, orange, green. So September for me was purple. I do sort of see the months of the year in colours. I see so many things in colours. Names, perfumes, titles, numbers. So for me, September is a month that I like looking at. I like the colour. But as for the purple pen, it is nice when you find a pen that you like. You like the way it writes, the way it feels, and the way it looks. In October, many things in my life changed, and you will see there are lots of additional bits of paper covering things. For those of you who are curious, they're bits of private information, locations, addresses, places I've worked or companies I've worked with, and things relating to my January when I move out. For me, October just flew by. Nothing really dramatic or interesting happened. And then we get to November. Yes, terrible illustrations. Now, for the last 2 months or so, I have been doing something different. I have been doing a column down the side of each day, and I have found that far more helpful, especially as the amount of things that I'm doing each day are expanding, separate things. My days are getting more squashed together. I did think about doing bigger blocks for the different days, but I love this structure so much. Maybe next year, in my next journal, I will space things out a bit more. This is also another reason why I have a separate calendar for work unrelated to the things that you see here. It's just made it easier to distinguish between the two. But as for the symbols, my symbols have got bigger. You may be able to see that is a circle under the X, and that stands for an event. And I do love this, the bigger symbols. There are days where I haven't used my bullet journal, or days at a time where I just haven't picked it up, and then I go back and I write what I did in past tense. It's a big combination. And finally, we get on to December, the last month. Yes! And this is my list of Vlogmas videos, or Vlogmas ideas, so I've covered them so you can't see them. Bullet journal is on there somewhere, one of those two. Now, up until the middle of November, my year was fairly straightforward. Whilst I have been quite restricted in my life this year, I could plan, relatively. But in November, a few big things happened, good and bad. Whereas over this year, I have been planning weeks or months in advance. Now I'm sort of planning day to day. So for the last 2 weeks or so, I have not been using my journal as I normally would. So today is Saturday the 9th of December. So normally, this part of my journal is ready to go. I'm sort of nervous to plan right now in case things change. Even today, I am recording this at 11 minutes past 4. That's my belly beat telling me to drink water. I'm cutting it tight, but that's just how the day's gone. But we'll see. We will see how things go. And then that brings me to the end of the year, practically. I mean, obviously, so many more things will happen during this period, but I have to film it today. Now, I have finished this bullet journal on page 100, and there are 248 pages in this book. So technically, I could do another bullet journal in this book. Lots of people do associate a new year with a new start, and for me, 2018 is going to be one hell of a start. In terms of dates, I will be moving out during January, and other things are in the works, so I would like to start from scratch, redo all my lists at the start of my book. Whilst lots of good things have happened this year, there have been lots of bad things in between the lines of what you've seen in this book, so part of me would like to just move on, start again. But let's now talk about design, if I can, being Claude. Over the year, I have questioned whether or not I needed to have bought this specific book to do bullet journaling. For some people, especially graphic designers and artists, having the dots has been so helpful. I don't know if you can see the dots on the screen, but they are so light, whereas other journals, things like that, the lines or markings are quite sharp. If you are somebody that finds the background of journals irritating, then this may be the book for you. The majority of the book is plain like this with grey dots, but there are a few pages where things have already been done for you, and I found that a bit irritating. I just drew over the top. I do think this is a fantastic book, but for the price, part of me thinks you could go and buy a plain notebook from any old store and use that. As for the book itself, I think it has held up rather well, especially as it's been all over the world, it's had things knocked all over it, it's had cats attacking it. The thickness of the paper was good as well. I think the pages have lasted, considering the amount of knocks it's had. For me, there were periods where this book was a bit too big, and other times where it was too small. I'm aware that the company do sell this book in different sizes, but this was the one I went for. If anything, this was the diary that I had in 2015, and this has been the best size. I could carry this everywhere with me. As for bullet journaling specifically, part of me feels I am not quite ready for this key system. Doing a simplistic key seems to work for me. One thing that I have loved about this year is the interactivity of doing this myself, creating my own book specifically for me. I've enjoyed that. Years ago I was using diaries like this, so calendars were already set out for me, and then, driving test, Becca. And then the diary part of the book would look like this. I used to do lots of doodling, and my way of crossing things off was to highlight them. But yeah, I can go through this another time. Even as recent as 2016, that's the way I was working. So I feel like I have stepped up from past me. In some way, this diary was like my first bullet journal, but without the structure of the key system. Overall, I have loved doing this. This book is not an art project. It's not perfect. There's things I like, things I don't like. There's a few big lessons I've learnt from this, like colour, for example. I will be using more colour in the future. In addition to the videos and content I create online, it has shown me that I have made some progress in elements of my life, even if it's drinking more water or reading books. I do hope this video has been helpful and has given you some more tips or inspiration for doing your own journals. Hi Blossom. There's cats all over this video. What is going on? Oh, I was on my conclusion and cats distracted me. If you have any recommendations for pages or tumblers or anything on diaries and organisers, things like that, or bullet journals, then please comment downstairs below and I will have a look. Finally, thank you for putting up with my hands. It's felt a bit like I was on Blue Peter or Art Attack, you know, doing things on the camera like this. I know my hands can be quite annoying, but I tried my best. Okay, I'm now going to go because I think I need to feed my cats. They're all over me. So thank you for watching and I will see you soon. For now, I will leave you with my end card. Bye everyone. Now Greyballs decided to come and say hello. Hello, sweetheart. Greyball. Greyball. Thank you. Get off. Get off. Look, I'm sorry.